Got time for a couple more. I'm going to talk about the Talmud. Someone on social media posted something about a Jewish book called the Talmud, saying it's the most hateful, racist, obscene document ever compiled. I've never heard of this book. I did look it up on Wikipedia, but info was vague and not helpful. Do you know of this document? Do you have any wisdom to offer in response to this person's comments? This is from Betty.
You know, the Talmud it's actually two books, kind of. In the time of Jesus talked about the oral traditions, and he told the Pharisees and the Sadducees that they were disobeying the commandments of God and putting above it the commandments of men. And what he was talking about is the oral traditions. The Talmud is composed of basically two books. One is what's called the Mishnah, and that's the oral traditions written down. And so those are commands and interpretations of passages out of the Old Testament. And so, for example, the Bible says you're to keep the Sabbath day holy, and so they would determine what that meant, and that went in the Mishnah, or the oral traditions. So, for example, you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath day, and so they came up with what was a Sabbath day's journey. And so that's, about I think it's about 2,000 square feet, or 2,000 lineal feet. And so that was a Sabbath. Well, that's not in the Bible. That comes out of the Mishnah. Or the oral, actually not out of the Mishnah, it comes out of the oral tradition. And then after the destruction of Jerusalem, the oral traditions were written down in what's called the Mishnah. That's the first part of the Talmud. And then there's a series of commentaries on the oral traditions that are written in the Mishnah, and that's called the Gemara, and that's the second part of the Talmud. And so it's the oral traditions and the commentary on the oral traditions. There are other terms that you have in Judaism that are unfamiliar to most Gentiles. One of them is the Torah. And so you'll hear the word the Torah. That's the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And then you have the Tanakh. And the Tanakh is the whole Old Testament. So the Torah being part of the Tanakh, and the Torah being the first 5 books of the Tanakh. And so that's just the Old Testament. And so basically, Talmud is oral traditions and the commentaries. And, there are things in the Talmud that we would find offensive in the sense that, for example, in the Gemara, it has things to say about Mary. It has things to say about Jesus. That Christians would find offensive, but that's coming again from a Jewish rabbinical attitude. And so these guys were writing in the context of Judaism at the time, and in the context of their historical setting. And anybody who would come and talk about the Talmud being, what did he say?
Most hateful, racist, obscene document ever compiled.
Hateful and racist and obscene. That is a racist, right there. That guy's a racist, and so I wouldn't listen to anything that person had to say. If you want to find some hateful documents, you can go to Islamic documents. I doubt that he would say that about them. If you want to find obscene documents, you could go to some ancient Greek and Roman documents, and they talk about sexual practices and that kind of stuff. This is a guy that can't read a historical document and put it in its historical context, and so that's not a slam on the Talmud. That's a slam on him. And so, I don't agree with everything that the Talmud, I don't agree with almost anything that the Talmud has to say, and neither did Jesus. But, again, I wouldn't come at that with racial slurs. So.
And those are the nuances in the world we're living in with the anti-Semitism on the rise.
Yeah.
That they're attacking that, tying it to the Jewish culture.
As if they have a moral high ground.
Right.
As if they have a moral. Most of the people who are doing this, it just makes me crazy. It's like I watch college students on our campuses thinking that they have the moral high ground in talking about Israel, flat out denying the facts of what's taken place in the last month, and walking around with masks on their face because they know that they're not going to get a job if people can identify them. And these are people who would adamantly support abortion on demand at any time, and even infanticide in some instances. People who nowadays are talking about the awful situations with slavery and that kind of thing, and then at the very same time are supporting abortion. Our society is one of the most corrupt and bloody societies that the world has ever seen. And most of the corruption and blood is on the left. And so I don't listen to a word they do not have a moral high ground on any kind of level. And I don't listen to a word that these people have to say. And so, yeah, they're hypocritical on every level that I can think of. Yeah. They don't have their facts straight. They don't have moral authority on any kind. They don't even have a moral on any kind of level. And that whole attitude just makes me sick.
Totally.